All right, so you guys have seen the version, this is 2.0, because I guess a couple of staff meetings ago, they had a couple of us present. But I was really focused on like student choice and giving students a choice in what project they picked and how they kind of ran that project. And it's always interesting because you give them choice, but you kind of wrap around that choice a little bit so that it doesn't get out of whack. So what do we do? Well, part of what I had them do was after we'd been in school about 6 weeks, I basically had them go make a list, like all the things we've researched. We've already done a bunch of current events where they had to see what, at least once a week they were finding some current event, some current hack that had happened, and done some research about it and written a little report about it. So they kind of had an idea of the types of hacks that were happening out there in the real world. And so I had them go off and generate a list of like what are all the different types of penetration testing or different types of hacks or different types of things that are going on that you want to learn more about. So then they're like, oh, what do I want to learn more about? And they generated this big list, and then I kind of whittled that list down. And that's what I actually had them then pick from to actually go do a report. And so, the deliverables for their project was, they were going to generate 8 to 10 slides. I had a rubric of what that looked like, and we'd already taken some time to look at how to do presentations and what presentations should actually look like, so that they realize, it's not just giant text or one bullet or no pictures and all that kind of stuff. But then they also had to generate a hands-on lab, where they actually had to have a lab that then the other students could actually run. So they would talk about some subject, and then they would have a lab about that subject, so that other students could then learn, more hands-on about it. And then they had to do a final report, and that was really, what did they work on? And they did this in teams, right? They released a team of 2, but they outlined, what did I do in this project, and what did my partner do in this project, and how do we collaborate, and how do we solve the different problems that we had. And then actually it was quite interesting. I said, now, if you were given more time, what else would you do in this project? So it was like, they could say, okay, well, I'm done. Well, no, I'm not really done. What if I had more time? I could actually add this other piece into the project. So I thought it was a really good project because they had to learn a lot about documentation, how to do documentation, how to do presentations. They all presented in front of the class, and then they all had to run this lab. So it was a really good interactive project. So like I said, about 6 weeks in, we put together a scope of a bunch of projects that they could do. Each student had to submit, 2 to 5 different projects they wanted to learn more about. Not necessarily that they would do, but they would want to learn more about. And after I created that list, then I had this big list and winnowed it down, and then let them pick. And so they kind of owned that project. It might have been one they'd pick, or it might have been one. Now they looked at this list and went, ooh, that one would be even more interesting than the ones I gave, right? So they kind of were able to do that. What I did, though, is I had everyone in the class pick their project, and then I assigned teams, and then they had to decide between the 2 of them which of those 2 projects would be a better one to do for their project, right? So they even had to winnow it down even more and figure out what their strengths were as a team. Maybe one project would be better than the other one. So not really much on this slide other than I think the idea that you get taught something and you kind of internalize it and then you go teach it to somebody else, and that's a lot of times where most of the learning actually happens, as you're preparing to go teach somebody else. And so this learn and then teach kind of concept is a good concept that I was using in this project. So what did they create, right? I talked about a few of these things, right? But it's interesting because everybody in my class, they want to just be little hackers. They want to just hack stuff and learn how to hack stuff. And I have to kind of pull back a little bit on that, and we talk about the ethics of it all, and when is it okay to actually scan somebody's network, and if you do that, then how far can you go before you're actually potentially in hot water. A lot of websites and a lot of companies actually want you to do penetration testing on their sites want you to hack their website, want you to try and break their software, but they want you to do it within a bounded criteria, right? And so I have to let my kids know, it's like, you get onto somebody's network and you start, hacking away at passwords, and you actually get in, and then you start walking around that network and they catch you, you can't say, oh, I was just trying to help, I'm trying to figure some stuff out for you, right? It's like, you can't do that, right? And so even penetration testing companies who actually do penetration testing for it, that's their job, right? And they get paid to do it by the company, they already come up with a really tight, strict agreement on what they can do, what they can't do, and how far into the network they can go, and all that kind of stuff, because otherwise it's just the completely Wild West. And so we talked a lot about that, but we did some interesting, fun projects. I think the funnest one was this rubber ducky. It's a USB stick, looks like a USB stick, but when you plug it in your computer says, just like any USB device that you plug in your computer, says, what are you? And the rubber ducky says, I'm a keyboard. And the computer says, I love keyboards, and tell me what to do. And then the rubber ducky starts telling the computer what to do. And anything you can type in the keyboard, that rubber ducky can have a big script file that it just starts going through that, and it can virtually do anything that you can do from your keyboard, right? And you can open up and change admin passwords. You can open up and install software. You can open up and install a port into to another computer so that somebody can remote log on your computer. You can do all kinds of stuff. And so I have that little product is zipped up in a little Ziploc bag with a little sticker in there that says, if you didn't program this, don't plug it in your computer, because who knows what's on it. So one of the goals they had was we have an XP machine, so it's an old machine with XP operating system on it, which has got all kinds of vulnerabilities, and their goal was to actually plug that in and kill that machine, right? And so it's like, you never know what's going to happen on that. But it was fun to kind of see them actually own these projects and really, realize that it was on them to come up with something interesting, and because they kind of had a choice in what they picked, and they had a lot of choices, they actually owned it, and that was nice, instead of just telling them, well, here's your assignment and turn this in, right? And they really actually went further than I expected on a lot of the projects. So that was kind of nice to give them that choice. Anyway, that was presentation. What I learned, right? And that's what I learned, right? Was that they actually seem to work harder when they have that choice. They feel like they own that project a little bit more. Thank you.
So, Jim?
Yep.
Once they had the project, were they would just go off and research and figure out how to do it, or what were their, like, the code a fake virus or the code the rat?
Yeah. So the rat is basically a remote access to a computer. Their goal was to actually get a rat and they get it installed. And so we had some computers we could do that on, so they wouldn't do it on their classroom computer. But they would go through the process of, what is a rat? So the history, their presentations was more, what is it? How do you protect from it? And then their lab was, here's a situation. This is how you might inject one of these onto a computer, and this is what someone might try and do to you. And so how do you actually stop that from happening? And so they got to do a lot of research, but they also had to actually create the actual material and the hands-on kind of lab that they would do for that particular thing.
Did they actually learn how to break through a firewall?
Yeah, so you think, oh, these hackers, they know how to do it, right? But if a particular firewall is not set correctly, when you actually go interrogate that system, you can actually see the settings, right? So for example, when somebody sends you a phishing email, right, and it's got a link, click here for hearts and puppies, you have a secret admirer, and like, I want to know who that secret admirer is. So you click on that link. More often than not, that's not going to just a web page. It's going to some script, some PHP thing. So it's going to run, and that transaction between your browser and that server, there's a whole back and forth that happens, and sometimes 4 or 5 transactions go back and forth, where it says, well, what kind of browser are you? Oh, you're this browser. And what version of the browser are you? Okay, and what else can you tell me about your system? And that all happens normally through normal transactions, right? But what happens is that they then go, oh, you got version 6.3 of the Adobe Acrobat, because you're trying to open up a PDF file. But it's the current version is like 9.8, and 6.3 has this flaw and this flaw and this flaw. And so then they can actually react to that, knowing what version of Adobe Acrobat is, by the kind of file they send you back that looks like an Adobe Acrobat file, but is not. And they can exploit that vulnerability, because then they end up being able to run a little bit of code, right? Well, that code actually opens up port 22, which is a port on the computer. And then because you've got that port open, then they can connect back to that port with another tool that then lets them get more access to the computer. And then once they do that, then they actually have access. Well, they do this all very quietly. You don't know this has happened, and they don't want you to know that they even have any kind of access, because then at some later point in time, they're going to use your computer for some other purpose, right? And so the short answer is, yeah, they actually have a hard time actually breaking some of these things, but depending on how we set the machine up, with known vulnerabilities, they can exploit those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, because I had my computer hacked, and then it went to my checking account.
Oh yeah, no, I mean once they get on, and once they get onto your email, I mean here's the thing, right? Who's got the same, your Facebook password and your email password and your bank password are all the same username and passwords, right? Because if they get one, what's your most important password? Is it your bank password?
The bank.
The bank, yeah, because they can get money, right? No, it's probably your email, because once they get your email, and they actually can go through and read all your emails and walk through your email account, they can figure out what your bank is through the emails that you have, and they can probably figure out what your username is, right? And then they can go, oh, I forgot my password, click, right? Well, where do they send that password? They send it to the email account that they now have access to, so now they can change the password, right? And then they can get in, and then they can do whatever, right? So having different passwords on different accounts is really important. Different usernames, really important, right?
Yeah. Thanks for scaring us.
No, but here's the trick, right? Here's the trick. Having your computer update every time, turn your update software automatically on, so it automatically updates all the time, and make sure your software is always updated, because when, you're like, oh, another update from, Amazon, oh, another update from Google, it's like, why am I doing this, right? Why is this? Well, it's because they found some problem, they want you to update your computer. If you don't, there's a vulnerability that's open, right? And, they say that so there's types of vulnerabilities, the known vulnerabilities and the 0 day. 0 day are like, nobody knows about this, somebody found it, and between now and when it becomes public, they've got all this time to exploit that vulnerability until somebody in authority finds it. And but what happens is you've got all kinds of people who don't update their computer. They don't get the right drivers in. They don't update the software, so it's the latest software. And so all of them, their vulnerabilities are still there. 3-year-old vulnerabilities still there on their computer because they haven't updated that piece of software. And so for them, those vulnerabilities get found. And seriously, you put a computer on the network, and everyone in the world starts going, oh, what's that? Right? So one of my students, and I know I'm going over time, so tell me to stop whenever. But one of my students set up what is called a Honeypot. All right, so he got one of our old computers, set it all up with, I think, Windows 7, got it all set up, and then he actually took that computer home because we couldn't do it on the network because you have to be able to get out through the firewall, and we couldn't do that. We took that computer home over the weekend and set it up on his network so that it was open. It's like, here's a computer, bam, it's on the network, and he port forwarded so that his IP address shows up everywhere in the world, right? Anybody scanning, and everybody's all scanning, and all of a sudden, he's got people from China and Eastern Europe and everywhere, just ding, hello, hello, bing, and they hit a port, and then he sees them then go, oh, let me hit this port, and then he can watch that. He's got some Wireshark running, which is a tool that we do. Got Wireshark running, and he can see them going, hello, oh, hey, I got someone. Hello, 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 looking on these ports, and there's one port where it's open, and you can actually get access to stuff. Well, he has this thing called a Honeypot, which is in there, so it looks like, oh, this thing's open. Well, as soon as they connect to that, then he gets their IP address, and he gets their information, right? And so he came in, and he's got this whole big file. It's like hundreds and hundreds of IP addresses.
They were Russians, right?
All over the world, all over the world. Yeah, lots of Eastern Europe, lots of Russia and China. They're just all kinds, and a lot of them are just somebody doing it. But a lot of them are. That's the criminal organization. It's like they've got these little robots that are just searching the internet for an open IP, and bam, there it is, and then they start poking, and he can watch all that poking that would go on, and it was, I mean, that happens. So, yeah, make sure your firewalls are up and running, make sure you got all your software is up to date, make sure you've got a good service provider that has their own good software.
What could your bank do with a piece of paper and a check?
Exactly.
So if you get an account, let's say with Verizon or Charter or Dish Network, do they have firewalls to
Yeah, they've got a lot of protection on their side, and I mean, and that's what you're relying
They
on.
come into your account,
So yeah, I mean,
protected with their account.
yeah, but here's the thing, right? You're giving all kinds of personal information every time you sign up an account, all kinds of personal information out to all these companies that don't have any real restrictions on how they actually manage your data. I mean, a lot of medical companies stuff, they have HIPAA, and there's some specific requirements on how user data is stored and who can access that data and what servers it's on. But most everybody else, no. Like Target, right? The big Target hack, that cost them millions, probably $2 billion by the time they got done. Probably cost them, right? And how that happened was, they had there was an HVAC subcontractor, person who did stuff with them, right? And so someone you could buy HVAC stuff through Target, through this guy, right? And that company had a trusted connection to the Target network. Well, somebody in that company got phished, and so they got some email, hearts and puppies, click here, right? They did. That person then got some stuff onto their computer. Then they got another port opened up so that then they could actually really get onto the computer. Then they started walking around that company's network and went, oh look, there's a secure connection to Target. Let's go do that. So they connected to it. Target goes, oh yeah, we trust these guys. In they go, right? They had the right passwords and right credentials. And into the Target network they got. And now they're walking all around Target network. So here's the problem that lots of companies have. You've got a contractor, HVAC contractor, like all the other contractors that Target might have, and the partners they work with, right? But because they were able to get onto the Target network, that person then walked all over Target network and were actually able to go get username and passwords, credit card numbers, all kinds of data. And it's like, that contractor never should even if they didn't get hacked, that contractor should never have been able to actually get into those compartments of the Target network. And so that was on Target for not having those things set up, right? So if you're in a company, it's like engineering has in charge of engineering files, but they shouldn't actually have rewrite privileges of finance files, right? They shouldn't have rewrite privileges in payroll or in the IT and stuff like that, right? So you compartmentize everything so that within your network, you've got basically firewalls inside your network, right? And so, but like all kinds of companies, they just have a big network and there's all the stuff and you get onto their network and you walk around. And so, yeah, we trust them. We hope that Verizon's got good security. We hope that, Netflix has got good security. But, somebody hacks them, it's like, all right, now I have to change my Google password again, right? I have to change my, again, right? Should probably change your password every couple months.
Anyway, when you open a website and you are, let's say as a Red Cross, they can pop up several Red Cross. When you open the real one, there is
Like the little lock, yeah, so it's secure, that's HTTPS.
exactly.
And so that, for the most part, you trust that,
Some of it,
right? It's there. But yeah, you just have to be careful, right? Because like, you know, bank,
Every sentence begins with but.
I know, bank, oh, you know, you click on the site and there is Bank of America, right? Beautiful site, all the logos and everything, looks exactly like the site. But if you looked at the link, it's Bank of America, right? It's like slightly different. It's not HTTPS. Somehow you got some email, you clicked on it, open up, and you go, oh, there's my bank, right? And then there's the password. You log in, and then it didn't work correctly. That's weird. Let me try that again. Well, you just gave somebody your username and password, and probably before you actually finally get to your site, you get there, and finally you're like, this is weird. You close down, you open up, oh, this is the right link. You get onto it, and you get onto your Bank of America, you go into your account,
Balance zero.
and you can't log in. You're like, what the heck? Because a minute ago, they went already to change your password.
All right.
Thank you.